Hi, my name is Jeff Rhodes, and this is another video on creating business applications with Microsoft 365 based on my book. And today we're going to take two examples from the book where we store data in SharePoint list and show how to archive those with Power Automate. So if you don't have a copy of the book, you can get it on Amazon or other places, and it's in the Kindle and paperback version, and give us some reviews. So I don't have any reviews on the new version yet, so it just came out. So I also wanted to give some shout out to this blog, the William BR's blog, William Roca, and it pretty much covers the gist of what we're going to do today. I have a little bit of additional things in the second example because of the date, it not being a date column, and there's some other logic that I added, but this gets you started on how to do it. So let's get going, and you might recognize these from the book and previous videos. So the first example is I did a reservation system where I've got an appointment date, and goes through and then they can go in and add a subject and a comments, and then it changes the status to book. So what I want to do is anything older than a year. So I purposely made these two down at the bottom previous over a year ago. And I want to, if it's booked and actually has a person in, I want to go and archive it. And then in both cases, I want to delete it. And then we'll do a second example with our status report where similar, but it's got its status week start date, but that's an actual text field and not an actual date, which complicates things just a little bit. And then everything we want to archive, we're not going to do any logic there. So I've already created the archive for the second one to save time, but let me show you real quick how you save. I'll do it for the first one on how you set the archive, because in the old days we would do templates and so forth, but now what you just want to do is do a new list and just say from existing list, and then I'm going to pick that reservations one, and I'll just call it reservations archive, and I'm going to go ahead and put a year on it. I'm just going to say 2022, but we could do something else, but we just need to make sure that that it's basically one extra list, and eventually when it gets full, or you'll see I'm going to do some logic that every couple of years we're going to do a new one. So why do you want to archive? Well, that helps you with delegation problems, even though I've shown some videos and in the book on how you can overcome those, but also just SharePoint lists don't like to get too big. So certainly after you get 5,000-10,000 records in there, it's unwieldy and makes everything slower. So and it looks like I already have, I thought I deleted this one, the reservations archive. So hold on, let me pause just a minute, make sure I got an empty list to deal with. All right, I'm back. It's empty. I had been playing with it before the video, and it just hadn't refreshed the screen. So we have our blank one, and we're going to copy that information over. So let's jump over to Power Automate, and I'm going to go ahead and make a new scheduled flow, and we're just going to call it video archive reservations list, and I'll say start at the next Sunday, and we don't care the time. We're going to do it every week, and we'll just do it on a Sunday, something like that. And so our first task is to get a date of what we're going to compare everything to. So we want to use our compose option, and we're going to go over to expression, and we're going to say, okay, format date time, and we're going to use this nice thing, UTC now. Notice how it has the parentheses after that. Oh, and actually, sorry, that's not right. We're going to say add to time, And now we're going to say UTC now. I'm trying to get ahead of myself. And then the second parameter is an integer. So we're going to say minus 12. So we're taking the current date minus 12, and then we have to tell them what we're going to subtract. And I'm going to do month, like that. So that will give us, and I like to name these, so I'm going to do it real quick. So I like to say create reference date in the past. Because we get lots of these, we want to make sure that we're kind of knows what's what. So I'm going to go in variables, and we're going to initialize the variable. So the first one we're going to want to use, and I don't really need it this one, but I'm going to need it in the next one. I'm going to copy this for our second example. So I'm just going to use it in both. So this is going to be an integer, and I'll rename that and just initialize that like that. And that's just going to be the row number that we're going to delete. And then the other one, which I'm going to do 3 variables. And this one I'm going to do current year. So I'm going to do some math eventually. And that's going to be an integer as well. And this one gets a little bit complicated, so I'm going to do it from the inside. So first I'm going to format the current date. So I'm going to say format date time. I'm going to again use that UTC now. And I'm going to format that as a 4-digit year. But notice that's a string. See how it says it's a string, so I'm going to then come outside that, and I'm going to use the int function, which takes a string and turns it into an integer. So we'll see later if that works when we test it, but that will give us current year. And then I've got one more variable. There it is. And we're just going to create a variable that tell us what we're going to do with the, to how often we're going to update our archive. So I'm just going to say the year changed archive list. I kind of played around with various versions. This is the best I came up with. So I'm going to give that an integer, and I'm just going to call that 2022. I'm also going to put a note in here because we're going to tell people what to do. And we're going to assume that somebody's coming in this who didn't write this flow in the first place. So I'm going to say update this variable. It's the current year and moving to a new archive list. All right. So now we can do the fun stuff. We're going to do SharePoint. And I thought I saw it there, but let's go ahead and just search get items. And we're going to pick our SharePoint site, pick our list, and then normally this would give us everything, but here's where the fun part is we can do this filter query, and it's what they call OData. And you can turn on experimental features, but it'll give you more of a dialogue, but it's not too bad if you just have to look it up. So this is, and I need to get this right, appointment date. And then we need to say less than for LT for less than, and then it needs single quotes. So we're going to go to that compose and get the outputs like that. So that'll give us everything that's previous to a year ago for that appointment date. And if this isn't spelled right, we'll get an error, but I think that's right. Let's go check it. Appointment date looks like it's right. So, all right. And then what we need to do is we need to loop through it. So we're going to hit Control here, and say apply to each. And I like to go ahead and name these as well. So I'm going to say loop through each item. And we're going to grab the value. Notice it's from get items. And then we want to do is go ahead and set our variable. So I'm going to set variable, and I'm just going to grab that ID to delete. And it'll just be the ID like that. Said I don't strictly need it, but when we copy this for the new one, I will need it. So, and then what I want to do is go ahead and grab each item so I have all the stuff in there. So again, I'll type in SharePoint. Let's type in get item. And I'm just going to use that and read it again. So I'm going to go through and we're going to get the reservations. And I use our variable. And then now's where I'm going to do our logic. Say, so if the status is booked, I'm going to go ahead and add it to the new one. So come through and I grab status value. It turns out there's status and status value. This is like the plain text version of it because it's a choice column. So we want that. And we don't want any quotes. We want to say if it's booked, then what we're going to do is go in go into SharePoint again, and we're going to create item. Again, we tell it, now this one's going to be our backup, our archive list. So we do this reservations archive. And then the nice part is it gives us all the things that we're going to do. So we just have to make sure we're reading out of get item here. So we do subject, we do appointment date, do comments, and then we have to say enter custom value. That's the choice column. So we go ahead and grab that status value again. Now the participant claims, that's a person column. But luckily it's got that same thing, so we'll be able to say participant claims, and that basically matches up the appointment length, the number, and then we have the scheduled Teams meeting, which is a yes, no. Whoops, actually that one I did incorrectly, so I got to make sure I get it out of get item and not get items. There we go. Make sure that one was, yeah, you can see where it says get item in there, so you know it's right. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and test it, because then it just creates the new item and we're sure everything's working before we start deleting things. So let's go ahead and save. We can make sure all our logic works, and then we'll come over here and test manually and run the flow. Now I like to check so it turns out the input and the output's the same, but I'm running this on the 16th of January 2023, so this is a year ago, so that's good. So that's so far so good. We're going to loop through each item, and let's go check. See, we've got 2 of them, which is good, but let's go check and make sure. I guess I don't have, let me duplicate this site so I can get the reservations, which we'll put that on the left. So we can look at it. And I added this. So notice it's ID 6 and 7 are the 2 that we want. And one's booked and one's available. So it's really 6 that should be added in there. Okay, so let's go over there and look so we can look at the variable. All right, 6 is good, and if we go over The next one is 7, so that's good. And then we get in, we look for our conditions. So we're on number 2, which should be false. And if we go back one, it should be true. So that's good, and it created the item. So let's go over to this one, and you can see it did create that in there. So far so good. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this because we only want it to create it when we delete it in the first one, and they're still there, so we haven't put that logic in. But so far so good. So let's go ahead and continue on. So after we do that logic, either way we want to go ahead and delete. So we come in here, type in SharePoint again. And we'll just type in delete item. Same thing again, we'll just come in, grab our list. Now notice now we're going back to the original list, because now that after we've loaded it in, we want to go ahead and delete the one that we're looping through. All right, so far so good. So we should now just do a little bit of cleanup at the end, okay? So after we've looped through, so we want to get outside the loop. So we're done looping, and now we just want to check and see if we want to give a message to teams that, hey, because we don't have a good way to see that archive list is getting too big, but we don't want it to go on forever and people probably forget all about this until it's too late. So we're just going to go ahead and do a condition here. And what I want to do is just use our variables and do some subtraction. So we're going to go do sub, and it's kind of complicated, but it's basically the bigger number minus the smaller number. So we're going to take the current year. So I come back over here. So I'm going to take that current year, and I'm going to subtract this archive change year. So let's say now the year is 2024, and we set that as 2022. We want to go ahead and notify them and say, hey, it's time for you to create a new archive list. And maybe you want to even do it every 6 months or whatever. So if we say if this is greater than or equal to, and I'm just going to put in 2, then we're going to go ahead and just post to teams. You could send an email or whatever, but I'm going to post message in a channel. There we go. I'll do it as the flow bot. I'll do it in a channel. So I'll pick a team. Just going to go to the general channel. And I'm going to need this, by the way, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this for a minute, because this is how long it's been. So let's copy that, and then I'll say something like the archive list for, I'll say the video archive reservations list, Power Automate flow, the reservations list has not been updated for, and then I'll paste in that expression. Years, please update the flow to point to a new list, and then update years changed archive list variable to point to the new year. And we're not going to test that because I'm not that far out, but you guys get the idea. So let's go ahead and save it, and let's see. And I'll like to rename this list, this condition too. So we'll just say check to see if archive is more than 2 years old. I'll save it again. And let's test it. All right, it's looping through the items. So we can kind of see for the first one, it went through and it did create the item, it did delete it. If we go to the second one, it did not create the item, but it did still delete it. And then we checked the archive, but did not post the message. So let's go look here. So yeah, notice that reservation got rid of those two. It's only 3 now, and it added that one. So one of them got deleted completely because it was an available one there. So nice. So let's, I know it's already been 20 minutes in, but let's go ahead and see if we can take care of the second list. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to go into save as, because the next one's kind of similar. So I'm just going to say video archive status report list. You'll see when we do that, it actually turns it off too. So we'll have to, which is probably good, just be on the safe side. So we'll come over here. So I'm going to go ahead and edit it. So a lot of this is going to be the same. Actually, this whole first part is the same. But when it comes time to get items now, so first I need to change it to our status report. And then I have to do something different for this filter query, because that status report, if I come over here, this status week start date, it's actually text. So I can't just do the less than, because it won't do that. There's no way to format it inside the loop as text. So I got to do a little bit different. So I'm going to just get rid of this completely. And that will bring me everything back. And so what I've got to do now is something called filter array. So I can search for that, and I have this filter array here. So I'm going to say, what am I going to filter? So I'm looping through at the value just like we were before. But now I need to come in with a little more logic to come in. So it's a little bit tricky here. And some of these will have to do with, some typing with the expression as well. So I'm going to come over here, and what I want to do is I'm going to format the date and time. So I kind of saw that earlier. And what I have to type in here is the item. So I have to get the item like that. Type it in with the exclamation point, the question mark, and then the name of the column in single quotes. So I have to say start week or status week. So that first parameter, all of that will, up to there, will give us the actual text. And then I need to tell it, and I got to be very specific on the format so that it matches. So I do the 4-digit year, and then 2-digit month, 2-digit day, T for time zone, 2-digit hour, 2-digit minute, like that. There we go. And then what I say is less than or equal to, and then I can pick that same, find it, where did that go? There we go. A little hard to scroll all this. There we go, the date that we wanted. And then when we loop through, now we got to change some of this. So I can't loop through the value anymore, because that would be the entire list. I want to loop through the filter. So if we look down here, I got to go through the body. And then now this one gets a little bit complicated as well. So what we have to do is come in as an expression, and we got to note the name of the loop here. And it says loop through each item, and we have to use underscores here. So come over and we say items, and then we need the loop name. See that? So we want to say single quote loop underscore through underscore each underscore item. So not that trivial there. And then we tell it that what we want, which is the ID, like that. The good news is that if it doesn't work, when we go to test this, it will tell us there. So we'll go through and do that. And then we're going to get the item same way, but make sure we change this now because we're getting the item out of status report now. And we're getting the one that we want to do. We don't need this loop anymore because we're actually just going to create the item no matter what. And we need to redo that anyway. So we're just going to delete it. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this delete item as well, because I don't want to delete till we've tested it. So I'm going to come in here and I'll go ahead and do the create item here. So let's come into SharePoint. Go to our samples. Go to our status report archive. And this one has a lot of choices there, but that's okay. We'll just grab them. And notice we're getting them all from the get item there. So we find the title. Not seeing the title. Where'd it go? Oh, there it was right at the top. Custom value. Office value. Status week start date. Description. Target. Whoops, need to make sure I get the right one because we need to get it out of get item. Oops. Scrolling a little bit weird. There we go. Target date. Percentage complete. And priority number. All right, let's save it. See if we did all that right. There's a lot of typing in there. And notice I'm getting this warning that if we could improve it if we did a better job on our filter queries, but we can't do that because I use text there instead of a date. So that might be a reason not to use that, but oh, I have to turn this on. So let's save it. And now when I go back out here, I should have an option to turn it on. There we go. And let's edit it. Test manually. Let's see. So filter array. It's kind of hard to tell if that worked or not, but there's two of them, so that's a good sign. Let's go check and see which ones we're wanting to do. I say it was these two at the end. Oh no, it's this one and this one. So it's 8 and 10 are the two IDs that we want to get. Oops. Didn't want to edit the view. Not quite sure how I did that, but oh, there we go. I went forward. All right, so let's look. So 8 is good. And 10. All right, so that shows you that we did that typing correctly. So we got the ID 10 and we're reading. And if we go back, we're going to read the ID 8. All right, that looks good. Now we can create them. So if I come back over to status report archive, there it copied those over with the right date. So that's great. I'm again going to delete those. And we'll put in the deleting of those records. So we're looping through. We created the item. Now we're going to go ahead and delete it. Again, we'll type in SharePoint. Delete item. Again, we're going to pick our original list because that's what we're deleting it from. Want to make sure you test this really well, of course, before you turn this part on, but we're going to delete that item. And then this mask should all be the same, but I should go ahead and change this. So this should be archive status report list. And that's status report. Other than that, it should, unless I wanted to pick a different team or something, that should do it. And let's test it. Again, I'm going to continually get that message because it detects that I'm doing the filter array on the whole list. All right, it's checking to see if it's more than 2 years old. All right, there it added those two. Create first draft of budget and update budget. Let's go back to the wrong. I don't have the status report one. Let's go find it. Yeah, and it got rid of those. That was 8 and 10 of the ID. Notice it goes 7 and then 9. So, all right, well, kind of a long video, but again, just to kind of summarize what we did is we used Power Automate. We created a variable, if you will, of what a year ago was. We compared it. In the first one, we were able to use OData because we had a date column. In the second example, we had to get all the records and then do a filter array and loop through that way. But in both cases, we did some logic to add them to the archive. And in the first one, we only added the booked appointments, and in the second one we added everything that was older than a year, and then we deleted them out of the original list. So hope this was helpful. Please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next video.